Welcome to the BPM360 podcast. I'm Russell.
And I'm Caspar. And together we will help you navigate the treacherous waters of the BPM adoption journey. I hope you enjoy the podcast. You ready, Mirko? Always very good. Russell, you ready?
I'm fine. I look a bit untidy. I don't know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of BPM360. My name is Caspar, and with me is Russell. How you doing, my friend?
I'm fine. It's a funky Friday for me today. I'm really looking forward. I've got a nice evening event lined up.
Nice.
And so this is like, but not say holiday, but this is it's always great on a Friday talking to you. Much better than on Mondays. I do admit.
Agree. Yeah,
we always had some
I
time.
think
The
that
first
makes
coffee
two of
wasn't
us.
quite in the blood, and now I'm really happy that we're meeting on Fridays. And I'm really stoked that we have a fantastic guest today. I'm looking forward to the session today.
Oh, we do have a guest. Oh, absolutely.
Yes, there was something, wasn't there?
Yeah. So let us introduce to our listeners, and the people who are watching the video have obviously already recognized you, but Mirko Kloppenburg, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Yeah,
How are
thank you
you
for the
doing?
invitation. Oh,
Yeah,
I'm fine.
for sure.
Even it's Friday. Damn, it's already Friday. Yeah.
Yeah, time flies, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, very good. So let's get this show on the road. Now, Mirko, I've been a guest in your podcast before, together with JM, if I'm not mistaken. I really like the way that you introduce and start the podcast, but we never hear your side of the story. So do you prefer aisle or window?
That's cool. Actually, I prefer window seat. Yeah, looking out of the window and relax a little bit. That's one reason. The other reason is I often used to work on the flight, and I'm trying to sit on the right-hand side so that I have a little bit more space to move my right arm and use the trackpad and so on. That's actually the true reason.
That's exactly the reason why I prefer the C seat on the aisle, so I can stick my right hand into the aisle.
But then I'm not sure
you
who
get
is
knocked
reading what
over
I'm
by
doing.
the stewardess pushing down the trolley. Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah, but just like JM mentioned, I'm a little bit over 6 foot, so I in the window seat it's just too cramped. I was in a window seat on Wednesday flying back from Munich. It's just cramped. But anyway, I mean, so window it is. If I remember correctly, what's your preferred airport?
I was never asked that question. So it's not
Well, you ask it
Frankfurt.
every time.
It's
I can
not
imagine.
Frankfurt. Maybe it's Munich, or it has been Munich in the past. I also like Mannheim. Yeah, it's
Mannheim.
such a
I've never been that
tiny
one.
little airport. Yeah, maybe that's my favorite. Yeah, but I haven't been there for a while. So
Yeah. All right. Oh, very nice. Now, I really made a mental note. If Mirko is a guest, I'm going to ask him the same 2 questions because I ask him every time, but I don't know his answers. So everybody out there, now you know.
Yeah. Thanks.
Great. Well, but we're not here to talk about planes, as much as I like the topic. We're talking here about BPM. And I think, Mirko, you are very well known for your human-centric focus on process management. And that is something that I've learned to appreciate over the years. We go a couple of years back now when you just started. And I really I liked it from the start, but I started to appreciate it more and more. And that's something that I would like to touch upon together with Russell in this particular episode, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Russell, you agree with that? Just before I go on.
Absolutely. But there is also one thing I was we ask our guests often is just what actually was a compelling event that brought you to BPM. So maybe also just for some listeners, I don't know how far you've covered it in detail in your podcast, but I think it would be cool just that also as an introduction for our listeners that you also just give a bit of first of all, your take on human-centric BPM, and maybe also a bit of your, say, history on what's your story that actually brought you. So we've had some crazy constellations of clowns and commanders in our show, JM and Roland, telling their story of what they originally learned and how they actually came by some compelling event to the topic of process management. So I think that's always a good starting point. And I think from there we can start taking on the drift of digging into your specific topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I never really thought about when I started actively thinking about processes. But the first project I remember was when I was an intern at Lufthansa Cargo in Frankfurt, sitting in an office container right behind the fence next to the airport, to the landing strip and so on. And so looking out of the window was nice all the time. And I was working in a project, and I was asked to develop a process on how to handle customer complaints, something like that, a specific part of that. And I just left school. I moved to Frankfurt, and that was my first assignment in this internship there. So I had no idea about processes, process management, process modeling, whatever. And I just used PowerPoint and some boxes and visualized the process, how to handle these specific claims. I can't remember all the details, but I think that was my first interaction with the topic of processes.
Okay. So what was the compelling event that made BPM stick, or was that maybe traumatic?
I don't know. From that moment on, I had a lot of process topics in the different assignments, and actually they have been always there somehow. And
okay.
At a certain point, a colleague handed over a job posting where they were looking for a process modeler for the introduction of an integrated process management system at Lufthansa Technik. And he said, hey, you are doing so many process things. Isn't that something for you? And I think that was the point where I really realized, okay, I'm a process guy. I have to do this. And I really fell in love with this job and sitting together with the people.
That was the calling.
Yeah,
maybe.
And there's no escaping it. You can't deny that. It's so strong.
I tried several times, but no chance.
We all try every day.
We all tried. Yeah. We can start up a book club around that.
So Mirko, so maybe just also from that time of your, say, leaving school, being starting boxing together PowerPoints to where you are now. What do you see as a kind of like the milestones of where you see that this is a topic where maybe it has too little attention, or it is the topic that you have to talk about most? What took you in this direction of specifically, let's say, specializing on human-centric BPM? What's the story behind that?
Yeah. So after working as a process modeler for 2 years, I moved to the central department, and we were providing the process management tool and methodology to the whole Lufthansa Technik group at that time. And I've been working on several projects, and we were always challenged by our COO that the acceptance of our process management system is measured based on the feedback of the employees. So we are not doing this for the authorities. Yeah, for sure. We also need documented processes to get the approval, for example. But we were always challenged by the COO based on the acceptance. What do the employees say? And I think that was more or less the reason why I thought about what can we do to get the people excited about processes. For a long time, we did a lot of research together with the University of Bamberg and other universities as well. And we did a lot of, I would say, stupid things. Some worked out, some don't. And so that was more or less the beginning why I always thought about how to get people excited about processes. But at that time, I often thought, as long as the process itself is good enough, everything will turn out. And then there was a very specific moment where I was heading a culture change project, which has nothing to do with processes. And I told that story a few episodes ago in my own podcast. There was one psychologist in the project team. And after a workshop, she asked me, Mirko, how do you feel right now? And she really meant my feelings. How do you feel right now, Mirko? And that was eye-opening for me to start thinking about how do the people feel that are working in the processes, for example. And Caspar, I know you have my calendar for 2025. Yeah, perfect, love it. And,
I have it.
Russell, I think you haven't.
I haven't got one. I'm
I'm
the odd one out. Okay.
Do you feel left out now, Russell? Sorry for that.
That's okay. I have to be a guest first on your podcast, and then maybe I get one sent over. That's fine. But jumping into that, I think that they're two absolutely fantastic points, because what I see so often is how much the end user of process management, who it impacts, is neglected. So having a COO that says, look, the ultimate output is measured on the users, the employees, that is something that's great. And it sounds trivial. It's not in reality. We've had projects where they really got bogged down because the process management departments were more focused on the process experts and everybody that was, say, doing the modeling. Yeah, and it was all about the modeling tool and I want these colors and I want this method. But even these people weren't really thinking about who and what are we doing this for? Yeah. So you get into this trap where you're trying to fulfill, let's say, experts' take on what the software should be doing, but they're not talking then about, and the methodology as well, but they're not talking about what effect do we want to achieve with this document or with this content that we are creating, and how do we use it as a means to communicate change and collaboration and a better culture. So I really think that is fantastic, and that's great to have, most probably for you to be in an environment where that was your challenge, and it was ultimately the mandate also to work in that direction. That's fantastic. And what I love about this story is around, how do you feel on the level from 0 to 10 about this? And again, that's it. Everybody's talking about business transformation. They talk business is actually people and transformation. And then they say, yeah, business transformation. They start getting their SAP system out and their bits and bytes and start hacking away. And they're similar to what you said about the process. If it's defined properly, everything else will follow. Even more this counts for the IT guys. I mean, all respect, I'm an IT guy myself to a certain extent, but it's like, let's get the IT system ready and running, and then hopefully I don't have to talk to people. Everything else will work out, And that's these two aspects, beautiful. I really, it really makes sense. It really, really rings a bell with me. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, and then just to add on to that real quick, in my career, when I worked in the manufacturing industry, like you did at Lufthansa, I did it in the chemical industry. I had the opportunity to do 2 tours of duty in, let's say, behavioral change projects, where we were supported by actual people with change management experience. So I'm always making a distinction between management of change and change management. But there you find out that it's about how to make people realize that they either need to change or not. And you can't change people. You can only change their environment so they can make the decision if they want to change, yes or no. And every time that I talk to customers and clients, I always tell them, I said, listen, everything that you do in whatever platform, I don't care which platform it is, but it always has a dual purpose. There is a purpose for the people that need to create and maintain the content, and there is a purpose for the people consuming it. But it's people, left and right. And if you don't focus on that, your adoption will never be where it needs to be. So I think looking from that, you're now working with a lot of customers as well, Mirko. You started your own company.
Yeah.
Is that one of those things that resonates really well with your customers to really dive into that human-centric topic? I think it does, but I want to just hear it from you.
Yeah, sure it does, but it's not easy. So often the people tend to, okay, let's do it on our own in an internal workshop without inviting the people. We can tell them afterwards. And this is really a problem, I would say. So I still have to push the people to invite their people out there to come to the workshops and to create transparency, to tell them upfront what is going to happen and invite them to participate. That's really a challenge. Yeah, but most of the people out there understood that this is something they should do, but it's still not easy.
Well, then I wonder then, why do you think that it's still difficult for, and I think certainly BPM type of departments or project teams that want to implement BPM to get away from just the technical side of it? Do you have any idea about that? Because that's what I'm encountering a lot of times as well. When you talk to BPM groups, they tend to have a technical focus still.
Yeah, I think it depends on the people, what kind of people you have. So it's super interesting working with people from HR, for example. They are completely different compared to engineers. And but even there, you might have challenges. And I think it's way easier to talk about technical or structured issues instead of feelings. So that's sometimes hard, weird. Something people try to avoid. I don't want to talk about my feelings, especially not in a company environment. Yeah, but it's such a superpower to ask the people, how did you feel last time executing this process, for example, and get some real feelings, ideas, what they experienced to get to the stories. So that's super cool, even if the people often do not like that.
Yeah, I think that there's really something about that, that people don't feel the comfort talking about their feelings concerning certain things. And the other point is, to a certain extent, I think in these, it's when you start talking to people about how they're feeling, then you have to. So what's your response? It is really hard to not just be able to offer an answer with the technicalities. There's a bug. Okay, I'll leave that with me. I'll repair it. But as soon as it's about, say, I feel really bad about this change, and I feel, they says, what am I, how can I help you? And often it's just listening and maybe explaining, why and where we're going somewhere, and providing them, let's say, a platform to express their feelings and trundle along. But we all know how hard that is, feeling helpless when somebody is overwhelmed. We all feel, like with kids or whatever, they're there and you're just saying, yeah, I feel with you, but I can't help you. That's like, and that's a real tough situation to be in. I don't think we, from our education, that's nothing that we've really been taught, have we? Especially not as a man studying chemistry. I didn't know anything like that in university. Nobody asked me about how do you feel, Russell. They said, get that stuff done. No, only joking. So I think that's definitely a real serious aspect about this whole change and process topic and the users and how to take them along. And on the other hand, I think as soon as you get into this dialogue, the people in the project as well also have a high level of insecurity. Yeah, behind the faults of the system, behind the whatever. Yes, and it's not my fault because. So it's you're also confronted with actually having to open up yourself as well in a situation where you don't know all answers. And I think that's the biggest thing about processes and change and transformation is actually how to deal with the uncertainty of everything that is to come. You can't give them guarantees your job is safe. That's going to happen. There's always a high level of uncertainty there. Dealing with that is a real tough one, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. But there, I always recommend to create transparency, to provide the necessary information, to answer questions, to be available, and also to trust the people. Yeah. For example, when you go into a workshop, then really trust on what they bring in and do not question that all the time. Trust that this is true, what they tell you, and create an atmosphere where they feel comfortable to work with you. And I think that helps, to be honest. And even discussing these strange questions, like talking about feelings in a safe space, that helps in the workshops, and you have to get there.
Yeah.
I
mean, it's easily, you can easily picture yourself, people being frustrated about the fact that the process doesn't run properly.
Yeah.
I mean, we hear that all the time. And then it's not all too difficult to ask a person, why do you feel that way? And then trying to get to the root cause of it, which might be technical. It might be somebody else's behavior. I mean, you don't know up front. But I do know, having a Lean Six Sigma background as well, saying, listen, continuous improvement tries to look to anything but the human factor, because that human factor is very hard to measure. So from that perspective, now imagine I'm a person in a company, and I need to implement process management, or I need to do process management improvements. Besides the transparency that you just mentioned and the trust, what would your recommendation be to that person on look into this particular way of using a human-centric approach to help you?
Yeah, start with the purpose first. So ask
there you go.
yourself, why are you doing this? Or why are we doing this? What do we want to contribute to with whatever business process management in general, for example?
Yeah.
So you can apply this question to develop a process purpose to any kind of business process. But if we're talking about the process of process management, it definitely makes sense to talk about the higher purpose, not the technical one, the emotional purpose of why are we doing processes in our organization. And that's a superpower if you have a good answer to that, which can really inspire the people and motivate them to contribute to a project, for example.
Yeah. So, and that's Russell. When I think about the little framework that we've been discussing in the first 12 episodes, which is in the top corner, by the way, 3 of the 4. Mirko, it's difficult for you to read.
Mirko, don't bother.
No, don't read it. I'll talk you through in 1 minute. So 4 main success criteria for BPM adoption for me and is sponsorship, which is the executive sponsor and the stakeholders, by the way, people. Then the second part is governance, which means ownership, again, people. Then there is a little bit around what we call center of excellence, which is the tooling part. And then the last one, that's the darker shade of green, human affairs. I mean, it's about organization and communication. Those 2 things are very often forgotten if you look at BPM projects that run in companies. So if I look into that, then 3 of the 4 main success criteria basically evolve around people. And that is still something that amazes me, how little attention that very often gets in these projects. Is that something that you experience as well? Or is that maybe even, well, it could very well be a reason why you have this human-centric view? I would love to learn a little bit about that.
I think often it's just about process modeling. So that's what the most people think when they ask, what do you think about process management? Yeah, we mapped some processes years ago and nobody looks at this, whatever we created there. I think that's the biggest problem, and that the people do not know what to do beyond process modeling, for example, or even as we already talked about, knowing the answer why we're doing this. So, and often the BPM framework is provided by more technical people who are not that comfortable with all these human things. Yeah. So there are coming a lot of things together, but if you are using the right framework, like the one you just described, or like the process of process management I'm using, you obviously start with, in my case, with the process purpose. And this is where you bring the people together, where you find the reason why you're doing this, and this will guide you throughout the overall process. And then you have to add certain elements like a strong definition of the role process owner, for example. So we're talking about governance aspects, but you also have to inspire process owners for their role. They have to understand their accountability and which help they can get, for example, by process architects and so on. Then you again have to inspire and enable process architects. So the people working, hopefully, a bigger portion of their time on processes. And if you get these people and they understand how they can get their process community excited about their specific business process, that's super cool. Yeah, you just have to give them some tools, methods, and I'm not talking about IT tools on how to involve the people, how to get the people excited. So that's what often is missing, because they're just focusing on modeling. They're choosing a tool which is way too complex, using a notation nobody understands, and then the project is dead.
Yeah. That sounds recognizable. And interestingly, when you mentioned the definition of a process owner, and I like that, because I always give the example to customers. So listen, it depends on what type of process, what type of character you need as an owner. So what type of characteristics, behavioral traits that you're looking for in an owner, because you can imagine that at the moment that you are an owner of a highly standardized process, you need an owner that is a little bit like a pit bull, somebody who relentlessly pursues standardization. And if anybody deviates from the path, he or she will hunt them down and bring them back to the enlightened path of a standardized process. Now, we also know that in every organization there are, let's say, more business specific or differentiating processes. And if you're an owner for that, you need to be more like a diplomat. You need to be somebody who finds the best practices left and right and tries to convince people, hey, what works over there might work for you too, but you know that you don't have a big stick behind the door to swing with. And that comes back, I think, to that human-centric approach, where you say, well, you need to have a very good idea of what it is that you're looking for, and you need to find the right people to have that role. Because if you mix up those behavioral character traits for the wrong role, it will also not work.
Yeah, and I think getting the right people in that position is a super challenge. I mean, how often have we seen that we've had organizations, so how much of my time do I have to spend doing this? And it's like next to my normal job, and then the boss is saying, yeah, but you can have access to this expert or owner, but he still has to do his own. So it's like, you want to play table tennis with this guy? Okay, but he's got to do it in his free time. It's like, no, it's actually a serious job. It's something that really has a real sustainable effect on your whole company. And it's like part-time, spare off 5 minutes. Okay, he can sit in a meeting and give some advice on a process. And getting that shift is really that is really tough. What I also think for these process owners is like a center point of success in these initiatives is they also have to deal with such different, let's say, stakeholders in the context of the process. So you say, what is the purpose of the process? Yes, and on the one hand, the quality manager comes in and says, for me, this process documentation has to fulfill all compliance standards. Yeah, and the manager up the top says, I have to be able to sell and scale my, sales revenues over this process. So you have this whole conflict of different stakeholders having complete different objectives communicated against processes, and to serve them from a documentation perspective, you need different methodologies. Also, from a content perspective, you have to balance, between the local, let's say, mavericks wanting to do what they want to, the centralized, standardization, maybe also driven by IT. So it is like we were talking to Kuran. It's like the superpower, these process owners have to be supermen or superwomen to be able to really fulfill the expectations there. And then they don't really get that recognition. And that's what I think is talking about the human aspect of it is that, we used to call our yearly meeting with customers, we used to call it the BPM-Selbsthilfegruppe. Yeah, so it's like people come together, and then we all talked about how little recognition they get for the job they're doing and what their contribution is to the company.
Yeah, please invite me.
Yeah, we should help us put this together.
I've been there a couple of times, Mirko. It's really fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you've been there as well.
I've been there, yeah.
And that's it, and it's really is you get there and says, wow, what a community of people that are so enthusiastic about this, who really want to make a difference. And sometimes we weep together about how little recognition they get for what they're doing. And that's a challenge.
But that's a really good point. Yeah, make the people visible. For example, process owners, yeah, for sure, because they are also accountable. But often you have people on an employee level that are the real heroes, improving the process, knowing all the details. And these are the ones in my world called process architects. Yeah, and we introduced this role in the Lufthansa world about 15 years ago. Made them visible in the tool. Yeah, we named them. So whenever a user looked into a process, they could click onto a button to get all the details. They saw the process owner. Yeah, sure. But they also saw the process architect. So the employees that are the real experts that they could contact and so on. And often in the beginning, 15 years ago or even more, these were just hobby roles, where people were named who had about, I don't know, a few hours a week or a month to work on processes. But in the meantime, this role became more and more important. We offered trainings to provide methodology to these experts so that they learn more on how to really manage their processes and improve their process in a structured way. We invited them to innovation workshops to Berlin and whatever. So there was more and more that these roles became visible and the people became known and famous, and they put more time onto what they were doing. And today we have full-time equivalents, real position descriptions as process architects or even organizational units with a number of people working full-time as process architects, and they get all the recognition they deserve, and that's super cool. It took us 15 years, but now the people are there, and they can be enabled to get their community excited about process. So that's super fascinating.
That's a wonderful point, and let me reinforce that and confirm that. Back in 2004, I worked in a company called DSM, so chemical manufacturing. They are known to be quite mature on process management because of safety regulations, and they're very process minded. I started a new role in 2004 as a full-time business process expert for procurement and demand chain planning. They were already having full-time jobs for those. That was one of the best jobs I've ever had. I did it for about 3 years, I think. And I was really part of, not IT, I was part of the purchasing group. And every time that they had meetings, they would pull me in. And if they had a question, I would just dive into any system or into the process and say, listen, this is the reality. This is what you want to do. This is what it looks like now. This is our starting point. This is what we need to do and to get done. And I was able to cultivate that role over the years until I got into that center of excellence management of BPM. But that was the true basis. And I so agree with your statement that those are the oft overlooked heroes that keep a process running within an organization. They know, even now today, if I go to a customer and say, listen, I'm going to do a proof of concept on a process for mining, whatever, I want to have a senior key user or a process expert in the room because they can tell me exactly how this process is going to run. Everybody else is going to tell me how it should be run, but they will tell me how it actually is run. They're sometimes like human process mining engines. There we go. That's a new term, Russell.
Put that in the glossar at the end. Yeah,
exactly.
And how many times have we been, I mean, just think, especially around process mining, I always recall the projects we went into, and there's a lot of questions, and everybody's just looking, and then they start saying, let me just bring somebody into the meeting that wasn't originally invited. And then I remember this at Degus at the time, and it was and then this lady came in, quite senior, and she just sat down there and she could answer all the questions and about why things weren't happening, how the system had been configured, and it was like this, and you were going, wow, that this person, what knowledge she has, it's just It's unbelievable. Yeah.
And
she wasn't even invited to the meeting. Yeah, she was then after they realized, that's the level of detail they need that we need to dig here. We need to dig deep and real. Then they said, we do think we know the right person. But then singularities. I mean, it's a lot of the times it wasn't like a team, it wasn't documented. So also it's just crazy. I think over the years when you see we had this phase where a lot of very knowledgeable people were leaving the companies, and how much experience and knowledge was just left, wasn't captured at all.
And I experienced that several times. If you provide process mining to process architects, so to the real heroes of a process, and they get this data from a tool, and what they can do with what they see in the tool, that's so fascinating, because they get all the details and they get numbers to verify what they had in mind already, and that's so powerful.
And that is powerful because those people understand the context.
Yeah.
And they understand that I see a deviation here, but I know that's fine, because that's that situation over there. We accepted that, so we can ignore this deviation. And if you don't have that context, every deviation is considered bad, which might not be true. Those people have that. So all in all, this episode is becoming a bit of a serenade to the forgotten business process experts, which I like, because that's human-centric, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Just one other thing, because we're very quickly running through our time here, which is a good sign, and I really like the conversation, Mirko. Just a little bit, just coming back to the thing that you one of your last posts around the trends for the topics for 2025. Yeah. We cannot let that one slide, obviously, and we were fortunate enough to be allowed to be giving input.
I have a remark on that. As soon as you posted that, my brother sent it to me, the screenshot of the picture you created with us all on. He said, "Well, that's not very diverse, is it?" And I went, "Oh my God, it's all old white men talking about, and telling mansplaining BPM to the world." I said, "I'm going to have to talk to Mirko about that. We have to make that. Next year we have to do this differently."
Yeah, exactly. That was exactly what I thought when I sent over the cover to Lina, who is helping me with the podcast. And I said, "Lina, damn, what have we done here?" And we said, okay, now it's too late. We have to publish it. And I think a week later, I published this picture with the
brilliant.
So and there are a lot of female BPM experts out there, and
absolutely,
totally. And I think that's why I said, oh, that's a mishap, because we don't really want to give that that impression to the BPM community. But the other thing that struck me, I started reading your diagram that you had there from top to bottom, and I didn't really look at the diagram on the right, but I just looked at the topic, said process mining up the top, and it says, well, where's BPM and an organization? Down the bottom there was then implementing BPM in the organization. I said, wow, why is that so far down? And then I looked to the right and I saw that the diagram, to make it look like a nice pyramid, of course the bigger relevant topic was down the bottom. So you called me out there and I was going, well, what a relief. Yeah, I thought, I said, especially you.
Look at the legend.
I said, God, stew the numbers. But that was quite funny. But I did like the topics. Yeah, let's dig into that.
Yeah. So what would you like to know?
Yeah.
Is it fake? Did you fake the numbers? Or
Yeah, sure.
Did AI generate it?
I tried to, but the results created by ChatGPT were so bad, because 101 people participated in the survey. And I uploaded the Excel file to ChatGPT, and I said, categorize the answers and evaluate how many of the people said what topics and so on. And ChatGPT identified process mining, automation, and AI as the three big topics, and then just other. So it was just put there the word other. And then I said, please do it again without using the word other. Try to find categorize for these categories. And instead of other, it came up with no category. So I had to go through all the.
So you did fake it. So you did fake it.
Actually,
validation, Russell. Validation.
I closed the gap by analyzing what these other topics were about.
So I think this is really good because I had a similar experience, and I was asking ChatGPT to map out business capabilities to business processes, business scenarios, and SAP scope items. And ChatGPT just was so confused by, so what's the difference? What is what? Because you see the descriptions of a business capability and a business a description of a process, and then some, let's say, SAP scope item like description, and he's going, what is what? And it just goes to show that in our business, because we're so used to it to be so, say, have for us clear definitions. It's not clear at all.
No.
And I think it's really. Makes sense that this hallucination with ChatGPT happens around this topic because it's such a fuzzy, and to a certain extent untangible. And we have to work on making these distinctions clearer. Caspar, we talk about BPM, talk to somebody else, he's talking about automation. We're talking about the process of process management. Somebody else says BPM. If I Google BPM, I get beats per minute, but that's another topic. But I typically will get BPM systems, automation systems. So when we're talking to our customers, or our customers, the process owners, are talking to somebody else, it's obvious how much confusion there is out there and how these fine lines of distinctions aren't just clear. That's why category other.
Yep.
Yeah. ChatGPT looks and says, it's all the same for me. It's
So that's
Go ahead, Mirko. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's why I went through all the answers. I really read them all and categorized them and evaluated how many contribute to what category.
Yeah.
And as you can see in the results, 17% said that they have process mining on their list for 2025. I think that was super easy to identify. Yeah, the word process mining, having that in there. But only 17%. Yeah, that's not a big number, I would say.
No, I think that was really astonishing. Interesting. It's super interesting.
And
so,
then,
but when you say these other categories, was it like a different, like a variation of phrasing around the topic BPM and getting it in? So they had like subtopics that they had in mind, so it was more differentiated on because process mining is just like, is there? Process mining, we know what you mean. But then I could imagine that there's a much more differentiated view on what they are tackling in the context of getting BPM concerning a use case, a specific user group. Most probably that's the reason why there's a wider spread on how this topic was let's say, mentioned and then had to be aggregated.
Exactly. So as second topic, we had process modeling and designing process architecture. That has also been quite easy to identify because modeling architecture end-to-end, whatever. Then we have this big category of process improvement. That's how I named it, where I have automation in it and also application of AI to improve processes and so on. Overall, the category has 46% of the people named something like that. They are working on improving processes. In that, we have only 23% who said we want to apply AI somehow. And automation was named by 26%, just to give you numbers. And then to answer your question, within this huge category of building a process-driven organization of 68%, there are a number of smaller topics and we have to get our people excited about processes. Nobody likes processes, however they framed that. But this is something, or we need top management support. Our management wants to know what's the impact, what's the benefit of AI, and so on. We don't have budget. Then we had another topic in there, like we need to train the people on BPM. That's for me also part of building a process-driven organization.
Absolutely.
We have to develop, implement a BPM framework. Like we have to define the role of the process owner. We need a process of process management. So these were also topics there. People named we want to develop a process culture, process-oriented thinking, process-oriented management approach. So these are all the topics I put into ChatGPT afterwards and said, now find a good headline. And ChatGPT came up with building a process-driven organization for this. So that's how
that makes sense.
That's good. Yeah, and it does show that there's all the facets of the framework. That the people are tackling one by one, and they have certain things in priorities, and it's very concrete, which I think is to a certain extent that's quite positive. If you compare that now with the general, let's say, term, just we want to do process mining, because ultimately, which domain, what is your real objective here, what is your real pain, how do you think it'll help you, that's more in the subtitles of then the big topic. So what we see is with people that are quite, let's say, new to the topic, they will just grab this high topic and then they will just say, we're going to do process mining, and then after the pilot phase and then implementing it, they get more, they said, we want to have like a sustainability dashboard for our supply chain. Then we're getting down to the more, what is doable and what is not doable. So I think that's a very interesting and good result. Yeah, I think very positive to hear that. Yeah.
The one thing that amazed me a little bit, and I'm just wondering if you have ideas about that, Mirko. So 60+% process-driven organization. I mean, how long are we already doing this as organizations? I mean, I've been doing this since 1999, since I started working. But certainly the company I worked for was really active already in 2001 on this topic. I mean, and that's something that amazes me every time and again. We need to still account for the benefits that BPM already have proven 1 million times to have. Why is it that companies don't believe that? It's a very fundamental question, but I think it's a good last question for the show because we're running out of time. But as a final showstopper, what do you think that reason could be why BPM is not, let's say, not taken for granted, but that it's understood to be beneficial?
Yeah,
very profound question.
I'm just scrolling back in my LinkedIn posts because I did a survey here, and here are the results. And I asked the people, when did your organization start its BPM journey? Yeah, and about 62 people answered. I don't know how representative the results are, but 31% answered that they are working more than 10 years on processes in their organization, or that the organization started its journey more than 10 years ago. So just 30%. And 6% between 5 and 10 years. But then 32% started their BPM journey within the last 5 years. And 31 answered, we haven't even yet started our journey. So I think if we're looking at the 30% that are already 10 years out, they have a very high maturity level already. But looking at the other 70%, or just 60 of the ones who are less than 5 years out of this journey, they will never have reached that kind of understanding, that maturity level. So I talked about that with Jöran Glüsen, who was my colleague at Lufthansa a few episodes ago in my podcast.
Yeah, I listened to that one. Yeah.
And I was sitting together with people in process modeling sessions about 20 years ago. Yeah, they were employees, experts for the processes, maybe already process owners, and over the years, they climbed the corporate ladder, and now some of them are in the board of Lufthansa Technik, or they are direct to the board. And these people really know how BPM looks like, how to work on process, how to use process documentation to tell the people how to do something and so on. They know about compliance, all these aspects, because they have this hands-on experience. And it took us 20 years to get there. And I think that might be an explanation of why we still have this situation.
It also sometimes, and I like that, but sometimes I think there's a form of corporate amnesia, because sometimes I get into companies that we've done this like 10 years ago, and then it worked, and then it doesn't work, and my conclusion, my preliminary conclusion, is that you can make it or break it by the people driving it. If key people move into another role, into another company, very often you see that as the decline of the BPM empire, so to speak. And then you go back to square one and you have to rebuild it.
But you have to feed it. You always have to invest energy, personal energy, or maybe money as well, to a certain extent, in keeping it alive. It's like, because it's structure and it's not chaos. Yeah, and we all know that everything wants to fall apart and go into chaos. So it will always be an effort of keeping this together. I think, especially in big organizations, they always have people are moving in or out. They're reorganizing, they're changing all the time. And to keep this glue together, it doesn't happen by itself. Companies have to invest in keeping companies together, in keeping collaboration, in keeping corporate culture up and running. It's nothing that just you do it once and wow, the culture stays super forever. It's something we have to invest in. It's like in a relationship, have to invest in it every day. It's nothing you can take for granted. It just keeps on running. So I think the question about the maturity is, I think, yes, Mirko, absolutely right. It can take decades to grow into the organization. Sometimes like a root initiative that then grows up. But the other hand is it's so sensitive for disruption. That's just the way it is. If key players go out, if a certain disruption happens to the organization, you can be 5 steps back again. Yeah, I think that's just the fate we live with in this business.
Yeah, that's true. But at a certain level, it's in the blood of the people. Yeah, I know a lot of people who never worked without process documentation in the Lufthansa Technik world. Yeah, they entered somewhere within these 20 years, and process have always been there. So they were assigned to roles. They had to work according to process. They use process documentation to talk with colleagues about processes. They try to improve and so on. So as soon as this is everywhere, then it's really hard to get it pushed out, even if some people are leaving, if it's so well implemented. But
I like that.
That takes time. You have to get there for sure. Yeah, definitely.
Our BPM utopia we are all striving for. That's the ultimate goal. Mirko, I love it. That's a good closing, huh?
That is a good closing. And we also need to wrap it up now. But I really like that as a closing conclusion statement, Mirko, of you. So just in the style of your podcast, Mirko, we've just touched down on Düsseldorf Airport, which is my favorite and Brussels' closest airport. How did you like the flight experience?
It's always fascinating to be guest in a podcast. So,
I can imagine.
I'm also experimenting with a new setup here. I have a little echo. I hope that we don't have that in the recording.
I don't have any echo at all. So.
Okay, that's great. And it's always great to talk to people who also have same understanding of process, who are deep into that topic. So I really enjoyed this flight with you today.
Thank you very much, Mirko. Then on behalf of the flight deck, I would like to thank you very much for being on our show today. And I wish you already a very good weekend. As we said, we're recording this on a Friday. Thank you very much, Mirko, and see you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.